This is the New Alliance Talk. The first 1,000 days, how child nutrition shapes a lifetime. Please welcome your host, Adam Levy from Climate Adam.
Thank you all so much, and welcome to this session on the vital importance of nutrition in the first 1,000 days of life, and how the power of one particular solution can absolutely transform young lives. Globally, half of all children suffer from a critical micronutrient deficiency, and for women of reproductive age, that figure is a staggering 2/3 of the population. Today, we're going to be reflecting on the roles that every aspect of society can play in solving this crisis. We're going to have a keynote sharing a profound personal and professional journey to tackle malnutrition. We will have a panel discussion bringing together the private sector, philanthropy, government, and the United Nations to provide insight onto how every aspect of society can address this problem. And we're going to close by looking at how one country is taking great steps to take the ideas shared here today and put them into practice. But first, to open this session, it is my honor to introduce the German Federal Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development, Reem Alabali Radovan.
Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, every child deserves a fair start with food to grow, to learn, to play, and to dream. Yet for too many children, life starts with hunger or with food that fills the stomach but lacks the vitamins that they need. Studies show the first 1,000 days are the most crucial. From pregnancy to a child's second birthday, nutrition decides whether a child can develop well, to stay healthy, and succeed later in life. This short period, 1,000 days, can shape a whole life. And yes, over the past 2 decades, the world has made progress on fighting child malnutrition, but the improvements has been far too slow. Conflicts, climate shocks, and rising prices are pushing healthy food out of reach for too many. And with the impacts of the war now in the Persian Gulf, we are heading towards a severe food crisis, even if the Strait of Hormuz does fully open in a few weeks. It is a crisis that is already hitting children and women the hardest. Globally, 1 in 4 young children is stunted. 1 in 2 children suffers from hidden hunger, meaning they lack essential vitamins and minerals. Let's call it what it is, a violation of human rights. And it is unacceptable. It creates vicious circles of hunger, poverty, and inequality. Moreover, malnutrition holds back entire societies. It creates instability, and it costs the global economy up to $4.1 trillion every year, almost as much as Germany's gross domestic product. But above all, child nutrition is a question of human dignity. A well-nourished child has better chance to learn. A well-nourished mother has a better chance to give birth safely. A community that invests in nutrition invests in health, education, equality, economic strength, and stability at the same time. That is why the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development is putting mothers and children at the center of our work on food security. With our initiative, Strong for Life Through Nutrition Security, we strengthen school meals, maternal and child health, and resilient food systems. We work together with partner governments the United Nations, civil society, foundations, and the private sector. Today's panel, really great panel, thank you all for being here, will focus on one solution for child nutrition that has very strong potential: large-scale food fortification. Adding safe levels of essential vitamins and minerals to food that people eat every day, such as flour, rice, oil, and salt, is a safe bet. It is no substitute for diverse, healthy diets, but it is a proven, affordable, and scalable way to fight hidden hunger and to do it fast. Every dollar invested in fortification can generate around $27 in economic benefit in the long run, because well-nourished children grow into adults who are healthier and more resilient. Fortification can help prevent health damage that would otherwise last a lifetime. This is why I am proud to launch, together with our partners, the call to action on catalyzing large-scale food fortification to end child malnutrition by 2030, a call that is needed today. Our ambition is clear. All children should have access to food that provides the vitamins and minerals they need to grow, learn, and thrive. I invite all of you to join us. Governments, international organizations, civil societies, researchers, and companies all have a role to play. Investing in child nutrition is one of the most powerful investments we can make. It is an investment in children's bodies and minds, in equal opportunities, and in the future we all share. So, let's make this investment together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that incredibly powerful call to action. There'll be more on that in a moment, but crucially, thank you for reminding us that whatever technical details we discuss today, this is fundamentally a question of human rights, human dignity, and human lives. And it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for the day, Beza Haile, founder and executive director of Hope Spina Bifida and Hydrocephalus. It's a nonprofit improving the lives of children and families affected by neural tube birth defects in Ethiopia. Now, neural tubes are the vital precursor to the central nervous system, to the brain and to the spinal cord. And to grow healthily, a pregnant person needs to have adequate micronutrients. Beza has profound personal and professional experience with precisely this topic, and I can't think of anyone better to start us off before our panel. So Beza, please join us on the stage.
Well, thank you so much. Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, partners, friends. It's a true pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I would like to begin by sincerely thanking the German Ministry of Development and Economic Cooperation, the Gates Foundation, UNICEF, and all the partners who made this event possible. I came from Ethiopia, not only as a representative of Hope Spina Bifida and Hydrocephalus, but also as a mother. Years ago, our second-born child was severely affected by a birth defect known as spina bifida and hydrocephalus, and it was due to severe deficiency of folic acid. That actually experience changed my life forever. It broke me, but also opened my eyes to a truth that I could never ignore again. 50% of women in Ethiopia are affected by micronutrient insufficiency. Out of the 7,000 members at Hope SBH, we have made analysis on 102 children, and the findings reveal that 26% of children have passed away within 5 years. 71% have received no physical support or rehabilitation support. 22% require a wheelchair due to mobility limitations. 13% are unable to sit or move independently. 49% are unable to access school or early childhood education. 16% undergo repeated surgeries due to shunt failure. And over 70% of our respondents live with bladder and bowel incontinence, requiring lifelong hygiene support. I learned that behind every statistics that we discussed in a meeting like this, there is a mother holding her breath, a father crying silent grief, a child whose life could have been different. And I learned something else, something powerful. Many of these tragedies are preventable. Today, millions of children are still born with preventable birth defects, and millions are suffering the lifelong consequences of hidden hunger. Micronutrient deficiencies remain a silent crisis, too often invisible, too often unspoken, and yet deeply devastating. This is a crisis that does not shout, it does not always make headlines, but it shapes destinies. And yet, we already know the solutions. Investing in nutrition during the first 1,000 days is not simply a health intervention. It's one of the smartest, most cost-effective investments we can make for human capital, economic growth, and development. And yet, if we fail to act, the consequences are equally profound. Some children survive, but are left to struggle with lifelong impairments. Some families endure silent suffering. Others lose hope altogether, carrying a grief that never fully heals. Too many dreams are interrupted before they even begin. The good news is that change is possible. We are not powerless in the face of this crisis. Food fortification, maternal nutrition, strong health systems, and coordinated action between governments, the private sectors, civil society, communities, and philanthropy can transform outcomes at scale. Beyond existing fortification practices, Ethiopia is also advancing groundbreaking innovation, particularly the fortification of salt with both iodine and folic acid, a result of local research and development work with a promising potential for large-scale sustainable impact. In Ethiopia, I have witnessed a partnership can achieve and what a partnership can achieve, working closely with government institutions, development partners, industry, and civil society. We have advanced national advocacy, policy efforts on large-scale food fortification. These efforts have shown me that when we unite around a shared purpose, progress is not only possible, it is inevitable. But our work is far from finished. As we gather here in the beautiful city, Hamburg, I invite us to move beyond commitments and into implementation. Let us ensure that nutrition is not treated as a secondary issue or only health concern, but as a foundation for education, economic growth, resilience, and sustainable development. So this afternoon, I leave you with a simple invitation. Let us build partnerships that are bold enough to match the scale of the challenge, inclusive enough to leave no one behind, and focused enough to turn commitments into measurable impact. Thank you very much, and I wish you all an inspiring afternoon.
Thank you so much for that keynote, Beza, and it means so much to have you share just how much this topic means from the individual level, from mothers, fathers to children, right up until the societal level, to questions of fundamental economic development which affect every single person in this room. It's now our chance to turn to a panel discussion where we'll discuss how food fortification in particular can be used to transform young lives. And I'm thrilled to be joined by fantastic representatives across sectors representing industry, philanthropy, governments, and the United Nations, demonstrating the roles that each sector can play working together. This panel will help us understand how adequate nutrition, particularly food fortification, within the first 1,000 days of life, can save lives and unlock the full potential of future generations. So I'd like to invite our panelists on stage. So starting with the CEO of Patanjali Foods, Sanjeev Asthana. Thank you. And the President of Global Growth and Opportunity at the Gates Foundation, Hari Menon. The Senior Special Assistant to the President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Uju Rochas-Anwukah. The Chief Sustainability Officer at DSM Firmenich, Dr. Katharina Stenholm. And we're lucky to have two representatives from different United Nations bodies, Dr. Catherine Russell, the Executive Director of UNICEF, and Carl Skau, the Acting Executive Director of the United Nations World Food Programme. Thank you. We have a lot of ground to cover and a lot of panelists. We're very lucky to have you all here. But let's get started, and I'll start with you, Kathy. Providing access to nutrition is at the heart of what UNICEF does. Yeah. And you have nutrition programs in 130 countries, I believe, right across the globe. Now, we've already heard in the keynote and in the opening just how important fortification can be to reach vulnerable groups, impacting children and also their parents. But can you explain what the challenges facing other nutrition interventions are, and how fortification can in some way overcome these challenges or sidestep these challenges?
Yeah, well, thank you, Adam. And I thought the keynote and the minister were fantastic, so thank you for leading up into this panel conversation. But at UNICEF, what we see is really what the minister said, that 1 in 2 children under 5 suffer from, we talk about it as kind of hidden hunger, but it basically means it's a lack of vitamins and minerals, and that can limit the growth, impair learning for children, weaken their immunity, and diminish their opportunities. And so those consequences for children last a lifetime. Many nutrition interventions are effective, we see that, but a lot of times they depend on repeated contact with health services, behavior change, like, don't eat junk food. I mean, it can be a whole range of things. Access to foods that are affordable and accessible. Food fortification really overcomes these challenges because the nutrients like folic acid, which you mentioned, Beza, or iron are added to foods that are consumed every day by children, and it doesn't need additional purchases or changes in behavior, so it's incredibly important. But this requires a lot of things. one, good policies, quality assurance, partnerships with industry, and that's why industry is so critical to the work that we do at UNICEF. I think somebody mentioned the success of the salt iodization, and I think that demonstrates just how possible it is to do this work when everybody comes together to do it. But as the minister said, fortification isn't a silver bullet. It has to be part of a broader nutrition strategy. And that includes breastfeeding support, which is obviously critical for children, healthy diets, other kind of supplementation, and really good health and food systems in countries, which is a lot of work to get done. Its ability to deliver at scale is one of the most important tools that we have. And I think, certainly UNICEF is committed to this work, but I thought that Beza made such an important point, which is, and we see this in UNICEF every day, there are so many terrible things that happen to children around the world every single day. Children killed in conflict, all sorts of miserable things. This is something that we know how to prevent. We can deal with this. And it's not super expensive. It's not really high tech. It's something that we know how to do and we can do it. And that, to me, raises the burden on us to do better and to make sure that children are protected. And I think these partnerships across this incredible group of people here demonstrate what can be done if we come together and try to make the world a better place for children.
And you're absolutely right. This requires coordination of every sector represented here on the stage. And I'd like to turn to philanthropy now and to Hari of the Gates Foundation. The Gates Foundation is known for its work prioritizing game-changing interventions and really emphasizing interventions which, for a particular amount of spend, are going to have a huge impact on human lives. How does fortification fit into that scheme of things? And how does it compare to other interventions which have a huge impact for the amount of money spent? I guess I'm thinking of things like vaccine distribution.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And it's a privilege to be here. I think the words of the Honorable Minister and Beza really set the context for why this is such a compelling intervention. At the Gates Foundation, we now have 3 goals that were articulated last year by Bill Gates to guide the next 20 years of our work. The first one is ending preventable and maternal and child deaths, for which vaccine delivery is one of the most cost-effective interventions. The second goal is eradication of infectious diseases. The third is lifting hundreds of millions out of poverty through access to economic opportunity and sustainable livelihoods. Nutrition is important because it is critical to the success of all 3 of these goals. And that can be said of very little other such interventions. And the reason we think large-scale food fortification can be a game changer is for the reason Ms. Russell just spoke about. It is one of the most cost-effective and easily scalable, in quotes, scalable interventions known to the development community. We absolutely should not look at it as a magic bullet. It has to work alongside other critical elements. So our nutrition strategy also prioritizes strengthening health systems for the delivery of nutrition interventions that work for mothers and children. We also focus a lot of our work on making sure agriculture systems deliver safe, affordable, nutritious diets. But both of those interventions take years to work at scale in countries. And what large-scale food fortification offers is the here and now. It's something you can scale pretty easily at a very cost-effective level of intervention. The only challenge, and that's why I said it's easily, is because it requires coordination across different stakeholders. The government, obviously, to set the policy regulatory agenda, community groups and civil society to make sure that there is a shared understanding of why this is an important intervention and the benefits that it delivers. And then, of course, the private sector, because ultimately a lot of what people consume, the here and now, is what comes out of the private sector. So it's essential to be able to work across all of these groups.
Let's actually talk now about how those groups can work together to put this intervention into place. And I'd like to start by looking at the role the government has to play. And we have Uju here, who is representing the government of Nigeria here. Now, Nigeria has the Nutrition 774 initiative, which operates right across all 774 local government areas, adapting to local needs. And Nigeria has really, in lots of ways, led the way on fortification and nutrition in general. So Nigeria's had fortification programs since the 1990s, I believe, and is also set itself the goal for zero hunger by 2030. I'm really curious what in all of this Nigeria has learned and what other countries should take away from those lessons.
Well, thank you so much, Adam. It's such a pleasure to be here in Hamburg. I want to start with something that I feel lies underneath all that we're discussing here today, which is that nutrition is not always well understood, at least not the way health or education is. When a minister talks about needs for hospitals, everyone nods in the room. But when we hear about nutrition, we think it's just about food. But it's actually when a child misses in his or her diet the micronutrients. This affects the first 2 years. The next 10 years, she's struggling in school. The next 20 years, she's joined the workforce, but is underperforming. The next 30 years, the government is wondering, why's my human capital returns disappointing? And I think this is what Nigeria has learned. Number one lesson, we must have the political will, and we must have nutrition and fortification prioritized in the national agenda. Number two is that we must have coordination and multi-stakeholder coordination that allows for collaboration and accountability in one room. Number three, which is the last point, is that there is a gap between what the law says and what a child actually gets on the table or in their food, and that gap is enforcement. So on the aspect of political will, what we've done in Nigeria, there's the National Council on Nutrition, which is the apex body for decision-making in the country. And this is chaired by the vice president. Not a minister, but the vice president. And what this says and signals in the room is that for agriculture, finance, industry, trade, and investment, this cuts across everyone, and it's everyone's business and everyone's mandate. So that kind of high-level political leadership. Recently, we adopted and reviewed and adopted the National Policy on Food and Nutrition, and we've explicitly stated in there that fortification is a key strategy for ensuring that we tackle micronutrient deficiency at scale. And so that's one of the things we've done. And if you look at the chain, when you have the political will, the policy follows. When the policy follows, the regulation follows. And then the mills, the industries, have no choice but to move in that direction. On the second point that I highlighted, which was on the stakeholder, we have the National Fortification Alliance in Nigeria. And that brings us all the stakeholders. It's chaired by the industry, but its secretariat sits with our Food and Drug Safety Authority. So in recent times, we've been able to reclassify the tariffs on vitamins and minerals, which is necessary for premix. So that has dropped the tariff because you have all stakeholders speaking to each other. On the last bit, on enforcement, we've seen that it's also important to ensure that there is a reward mechanism. So we utilize tools like the Micronutrient Fortification Index to see which companies are compliant. And we now sort of increase their access to the markets through social safety net programs. And so that acts as an incentive, because if I know that I'm fortifying my foods and we know it will get to the last mile, the woman in a state, in a rural area, doesn't have to think too much. She doesn't understand what micronutrient is, but because it's in her meals that she's already used to consuming, she gets the right nutrients.
Of course, then the food has to be fortified in the first place, and that brings us perfectly on to my next question, which is how we actually get those nutrients into those foods. And Sanjeev, turning to you, at Patanjali Foods, foods are fortified at the milling stage. I'm curious why fortification has become an important part of your business in the first place, and what you'd like to see happen to motivate other companies to follow suit so that fortification becomes more of a norm.
So more from a context perspective, we started on the journey nearly 2 decades back, when it was not even mandatory to fortify the edible oils that we had. So fortification has two sides. One is that what is done voluntarily, and then it becomes an industry practice itself. So it's almost like a hygiene condition that, if you have to do that business, you have to fortify. So that nearly 75% of the veg oils in India are now getting fortified. And any new company which would like to enter the business, if you don't have it, you probably would not be able to be successful. The second is, of course, the case of salt, where almost 90% iodine fortification has happened in the country, more out of mandate. But the challenge I wanted to tell about the context of in a developing country, what are the big issues? Really, from the scales in India are staggering. We nearly have 800 million people who depend on 5 kgs of ration every month, which is given by the government in the form of the grains. We have nearly 30 million rural enterprises and the urban enterprises, MSMEs, which are really the ones who are delivering the last mile connectivity to the users. And most of them are completely unbanked. So how do you build up a delivery mechanism which is both, as in case of Nigeria, through the incentive structure, and yet the regulations have to be strong enough to keep supporting that? And I think the suggestion I have is, and by private sector sitting in this room and talking about it, that itself is a great sort of indication or reflection of why private sector has become important, is that from an efficient delivery, cost-effective mechanisms put in place, and the ability to deliver real value to the ultimate beneficiaries. I think private sector can play a critical role. Where it becomes exceedingly important is that the policy side, the donor institutions, the multilateral institutions, and especially the not-for-profits. I think putting hand in hand, we can certainly devise policies and structures which is able to deliver the last mile way more effectively than perhaps what the state is able to do today. And I think that is a very critical requirement for any developing country where nutrition is a big challenge.
We certainly see time and time again just how interconnected all these different sectors are, and the role philanthropy has to play cannot be overstated. Of course, if you're going to fortify foods, you need to have the micronutrients produced in the first place. And that is where you come in, Katarina. I'm very curious, at DSM Firmenich, you're producing these micronutrients ready for fortification. How could shifting trade policies, we've already mentioned tariffs in this conversation, but how could shifting trade policies shift business for the better? And what could continents like Europe better do to support the work that you do?
Thank you, Adam. A great honor to be part of this cross-sectorial panel. And at DSM Firmenich, we really believe that fortification is one of the most powerful tools we have available to address malnutrition. As called out already by the minister and our keynote speaker, not only as a health intervention, but really also as a key to economic development due to the impact on learning, work efficiency, and through that economic resilience. For us as a company, fortification definitely offers an opportunity. Long term, it's very clear that the opportunity is there. Short term, it is a relatively risky environment to invest in. And the one thing that we need foremost is actually a market. And that's where the public sector can be really helpful in help us creating demand by embedding fortification in public procurement policies, as for example done by the World Food Programme. It could also be a question of awareness amongst consumers to create demand on a larger scale. Secondly, we need policies that enable fortification, but even those are ineffective if there is not implementation and enforcement. And that's where programs like the one run by the Gates Foundation, Millers for Nutrition, is super, super critical to set the standards, create the technical capabilities, and follow up on the quality. Then all of this obviously doesn't come together if you don't work cross-functionally. And I think also in Europe, to address the question, the European Commission has a big role to play. I would like to commend the German government for the call to action for large-scale food fortification. It was also already called out by my colleagues. I think fortification is really an unfinished agenda. We all have a role to play. Only if we work together, we can get this done. And I'm a firm believer that fortification is probably the most powerful investment we can do in development.
It's an incredible investment, and we're going to come back in just a moment to the call to action that was raised just at the beginning. But before that, I want to turn to the World Food Programme. We've spoken a great deal about fortification itself, but it's also a fundamental question how we get fortified foods to the people that need them the most, especially in very difficult-to-reach areas. Carl, the United Nations World Food Programme provides emergency relief during crises, and it also supports governments to design, scale, and connect systems to assist the most vulnerable. How does the World Food Programme go about this, and how can we ensure nutritious foods, including fortified foods, reach the mouths that need it most?
No, thank you, and thanks also from us to the Minister for this call to action. And I think in that action, advocacy, policy is critical, but it's also about doing. And I think that's where WFP come in, with our scale, our presence, often on the front lines, but also with our logistics capacity, our supply chain capacity. And fortified foods is always at the center of what we do. If I begin with the big emergencies, because that's where I spend most of my time, whether it's in Gaza, in Sudan, in Ukraine. I mean, obviously, people who are starving couldn't really care what they are eating. They just eat what they can get their hands on. And often, quality really collapses in those contexts. So we are prioritizing to get foods, cereals, into those operations that are fortified. I think now we're reaching some 90% of our cereals are fortified. And with that, we can then ensure that even if it's only a bowl of rice you get a day, it is something that brings vitamins, it brings nutrients, and it really saves lives and makes sure that not least children can grow up and be healthy despite the fact that they are stuck in these crises. But our work goes well beyond the emergencies. So we are present in some 60 countries where we are, thanks to our close relationship with governments, working on legislation, working on standard setting, and not least on the demand side that you spoke about. And here, our flagship program around school meals is really critical. So we are creating demand through huge procurements for school meals for fortified foods. But of course, we need to make sure there is also supply. And here is where the markets, here is where the private sector come in, and where we also, thanks to our big procurement programs, our relationship over years, can use then the relationship with retailers, with millers, with local farmers, but not least with retailers and big store networks to make sure that the supply is there when the demand is there. I think, to take this agenda forward, partnerships is critical as always. And I'm happy to say that I think we are partners with everyone on this panel in one way or the other. And really, now looking forward to contribute to this call to action in partnership with all of you here, really lending that operational muscle of WFP. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carl, and thank you to all 6 of our panelists for really showing us what every sector can do when it comes to combating malnutrition. And you can take seats back in the audience. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. For me, this is one of the profound strengths of the Hamburg Sustainability Conference, is bringing together leaders across industry, the United Nations, philanthropy, government, and showing how together we can tackle these fundamentally important problems. But that's not it for today's session, because we're now going to look at how one country is putting the lessons of today's session into practice. It is my great honor to invite on stage the Vice President of Sierra Leone, His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Juldeh Jalloh, reminding us why fighting to improve nutrition for children and mothers is so incredibly fundamentally important for individuals and also for nations. So thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, let me begin by thanking Minister Radovan for her leadership and for launching today's call to action on food fortification. Sierra Leone strongly welcomes and supports this initiative. I would also like to thank Beza for sharing such a powerful and deeply personal story. Her testimony reminds us that behind every statistics on malnutrition is a child, is a family, and a future. I also want to take the opportunity to thank our panelists for a rich and thoughtful discussions on a subject matter that is so very close to our heart. And I drew 5 key lessons that stand out to me. First is that in a world of constrained resources, we must be disciplined about choosing interventions that work. As a policymaker, we are facing what I described yesterday in one panel, the politics of painful choices. Resources are limited, development financing is under pressure, government cannot fund everything. That makes it even more important that we prioritize interventions that are proven, practical, and capable of delivering impact at scale. Food fortification, in my view, is one such intervention. It is evidence-based, cost-effective, and capable of reaching millions of people through food systems that already exist. That is why Sierra Leone strongly supports the call to action launched today. The second lesson is that choosing the right interventions is only the beginning. Food fortification does not happen automatically. Governments have a responsibility to create the conditions that allow proven solutions to succeed. Standards matter, regulations matters, like most of the panelists have just highlighted, partnership matters. In Sierra Leone, our partnership with IFC and Sierra Leone Flour Mill reflects exactly that approach. A $19.2 million investment package, including $12 million IFC loan, is supporting expansion of a milling capacity from 150 metric tons per day to 450 metric tons per day, alongside establishment of fortification capacity under Sierra Leone's National Fortification Framework. The third lesson is that nutrition cannot be separated from food system. This is exactly the point our sister from UNICEF just highlighted. That understanding has shaped Feeds Alone, which is our flagship food system transformation initiative. We are investing in nutrition-rich crops, strengthening agricultural value chains, and reducing dependency on import. Rice sufficiency in Sierra Leone over the last couple of years has increased immensely. The same thinking underpins our school feeding program as well, which now reaches more than 929,000 children, and our One Egg per Child initiative, which links child nutrition to domestic poultry production and rural value. The fourth lesson is partnership that has been underlined here. The importance of partnership, the importance of collaboration, as our sister from Nigeria also reiterated, and also the importance of private sector in all of this. The fifth lesson is one that I have learned personally. Whenever I travel around Sierra Leone, I make a point of visiting a health facility and speaking directly with health workers. Those visits keep me grounded in the realities that statistics alone cannot capture. Whenever I remember visiting a community hospital some years ago, as I walked through the maternal ward, I was struck by how empty it was. I asked the nurses, where are all the pregnant women? Their answer stayed with me ever since, that they have gone to find food. Imagine that. Women who should have been resting, receiving care, and preparing to give birth, instead they had left a health facility because they needed to search for something to eat. In that moment, it became painfully clear to me that we cannot separate healthcare from nutrition. We can build clinics, train health workers, and supply medicine, but if a pregnant woman cannot access adequate nutrition, we are already putting both our life and the child's life at risk. It was that experience that convinced me that nutrition should be a national priority. Since then, under my leadership and in my office, we have worked to ensure that nutrition is no longer treated as a health issue, but as a national development priority that cuts across agriculture, health, education, and social protection. If we want every child to have the best possible start in life, we must invest in the health and nutrition of women during pregnancy. This is why the first 1,000 days matter so much. For Sierra Leone, this has reinforced the importance of investing in maternal nutrition, infant feeding, and the broader infant food value chain. We are proud to have rolled out multiple micronutrient supplementary nationally, making it a national standard of care for pregnant women. We are also strengthening the infant food value chain through the Nyam Nyam Pap, a locally produced fortified complementary food for young children. This initiative, developed through a partnership between the government of Sierra Leone, the World Food Programme, and other stakeholders, reflects our national commitment to shifting the costly treatment of child malnutrition to its prevention by ensuring that affordable, nutritious complementary foods are available during the critical period from 6 to 23 months. I brought a sample of that pap. I don't know whether adults can still use them, So this is just to show you what we have been doing over. And through this partnership, we have been able to create 4 small-scale solar-powered processing centers across the country. We are locally sourced ingredients, such as soya beans and semen, are transformed into fortified complementary food using local recipe. Why this is important? The model connects nutrition, agriculture, and women's economic empowerment by linking smallholders to production and providing nutrition, counseling, and infant feeding education alongside community screening. Beyond establishing these facilities, women have been trained in food processing as well across the country, while linking them to private sector markets to strengthen the program's long-term sustainability. Finally, I must say, none of this will happen without political commitment, like one of the panelists just highlighted. In Sierra Leone, we have worked hard to ensure that nutrition is not treated as a niche sector issue, but as a national development priority. Over the past 4 years, government allocations to nutrition-specific and nutrition-sensitive intervention have increased more than 7-fold, while the share of the national budget allocated to the nutrition has increased from 2.56% to 8%. We have also institutionalized nutrition-responsive budgeting and launched a national nutrition information management system to strengthen accountability, coordination, and evidence-based decision. One decision I am particularly proud of was our commitment to establish a dedicated budget line for ready-to-use therapeutic food. That commitment helped unlock match financing through nutrition match windows and significantly expand the resources available for life-saving treatment for vulnerable children. Today, we are exploring opportunities for local production to strengthen sustainability and create economic opportunities within Sierra Leone. For me, that experience illustrates a simple truth. We do not lack solutions. We do not lack evidence. And finally, we are convinced that the long-term solution lies in building resilient food systems by investing in agriculture, strengthening local value chains, and ensuring that nutritious food are produced domestically. I agree with that vision, and Sierra Leone is actively pursuing it through initiatives such as Feed Salon, our investment in the infant food value chain. But from where I stand, as a policymaker, I also understand the urgency of the moment. We cannot afford to wait for long-term reforms to deliver results while children continue to suffer from preventable malnutrition. Food fortification allows us to save lives now, while we simultaneously build the sustainable food system that will secure our future. It is not a choice between the two. It is about sequencing our interventions wisely. That is why I want to once again commend Minister Radovan for a timely call to action. It recognizes both the urgency of today and the investment we must continue to make for tomorrow. What we need is the political commitment, partnership, and implementation required that proven solutions reach every child who needs them. Because ultimately, this discussion is not about policy, programs, or institutions. It is about whether children survive, grow, learn, and fulfill their potential. And when we get the first 1,000 days right, we do more than improve nutrition outcomes. We invest in the future of our nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much to all our speakers, to all our panelists. It's so clear through all of this conversation that we have solutions. The question now is implementing that. And that's a question of government leadership. It's a question of deeper private sector engagement. And it's a question of coordinating across every single sector. That presents a responsibility, but it also presents an opportunity to every single person in this room. And we're thrilled that over 30 partners are already taking up this responsibility, endorsing the call to action to catalyze large-scale food fortification. If you would like to get involved, and we would love it if you did, please scan the QR code, which is on the screen behind me today. This is to end child malnutrition by 2030, a call to action launched by the BMZ and partners today. Now, improving nutrition doesn't end at improving nutrition. From survival to prosperity to economic growth, the impacts are myriad. So this is a call to accelerate our efforts right across the board. Thank you again to all our speakers, to all our panelists. You've shown us the work that can be done, that is being done, to improve lives during the first 1,000 days and beyond. So thank you.